Do you want to see my book collection? A few months ago, I decided to reorganize my bookshelves, and then, because of many different reasons, I never finished. So now that I'm revisiting this little project, I've actually organized my books in different categories just to make it easier for me throughout the process. And I thought it would be really fun if I just showed you all the books I have. Well, not actually all of them. I thought that maybe regular books like novels I'm not gonna show you. I just don't think they're very interesting. So I decided I'm going to show you 3 or maybe 4 categories. So today I'm going to be showing you all my short story collections, and I'm pretty sure they're all gonna be horror. Then in part 2, I'm going to show you all my spooky non-fiction. I do have some regular non-fiction as well, but only a few of those, and again, I don't think they're super interesting, so I'm not gonna show those. Then I thought it would be really fun if I showed you kind of like my coffee table books, or books that are more like decorative or have a lot of illustrations, things like that. And finally, and this I'm yet undecided, we'll see, but I was thinking the 4th one could be kind of like my vintage horror. I feel like I don't have the best selection of vintage horror, that's why I'm a bit like, I don't know, but let me know in the comments if that's something you'd like to see. I'm happy to show you. Maybe it is more interesting than I think, I don't know. But as I said, right now it's time to look at my short story collections and anthologies. Let's start with my newest acquisitions. These are a couple of books that I've been wanting to get for a while, and I thought that now was finally the time. The first one is Poking Holes by Juan Valencia. I actually do own the ebook edition for these, but then Juan kindly sent me signed book plate, so of course I needed a physical copy to put that in. I'm going to try to not speak about every single one of these for too long, otherwise it's gonna take ages. If for some reason you don't know who Juan Valencia is, he is a booktuber from the channel Plagued by Visions, and I'd say he's famous for reading and very intelligently critiquing transgressive fiction. And this is, I think, his first go at writing horror fiction, so I haven't read any of these stories, but yeah, I expect them to be quite transgressive and I'm excited. And then on a similar vein, we have Look at Our Holes, an anthology of voids and orifices. This is edited by Juan Valencia, and the money that was made from these books was raised for the indigenous Cucapá people of El Mayor in Mexicali, which is a place in Mexico. As you know, I'm Mexican and Juan is Mexican American or just Mexican but lives in the US, and I really admire his support for indigenous communities, so I wanted to support as well. And as you can imagine, this is a whole themed anthology, which is interesting to say the least. We then have these 2 books, The Best Horror of the Year, volumes 14 and 15, edited by Ellen Datlow. So outstanding short stories for the years, I think these are 2022 and 2021. Have I read any of these? No. Do I keep buying these every year? Yes. I do want to read them, I do, so I think I'm just gonna have to make space, like very intentionally, to read these. This one's also relatively new. It is Discontinue If Death Ensues, Tales from the Tipping Point. This is an anthology put together by Flame Tree Press, and this is from a series they have which is called the Beyond and Within, in which, if I understand correctly, they put together these anthologies with different themes in the speculative as well as myths and folklore genres. I was intrigued by these because it is 15 dark tales and 5 poems focused on the strength of women faced with adversity, and also because it's gorgeous. Then we have Static Lullaby by J.G. Giles K. That's tricky to say. To be completely honest, I don't know much about this. I bought it because I saw it in a recommendation video by Pax Panic, an amazing booktuber that is sadly no longer with us. So I would love to read this and remember her. I think that would be really lovely. And she had such a unique and interesting taste in books that I'm sure this is going to be very cool. Then we have Body by Asa Nonami. This is translated Japanese fiction, and I'm pretty sure this is body horror, but with a focus on self-perception. That's a topic I'm really interested in philosophically, sociologically, and I'm intrigued about how these will be treated within horror fiction. I'm gonna show this book, which is in Spanish, but I'm only going to show books in Spanish when the English translation is available. Otherwise, that wouldn't make sense. I do have a bunch of books in Spanish, mostly Latin American fiction, that has not been translated to English, so I didn't think I would make a category of those because I don't know if enough people will care, but if you do, again, leave in the comments and I can show you and kind of like translate the synopsis for you. Maybe it could be fun, I don't know. This is Human Sacrifices by Maria Fernanda Ampuero. The title in Spanish is Sacrificios Humanos. This is a collection of short stories that are meant to be gritty, violent, rotten. I might be wrong about this, but I think I heard she writes a lot about marginalized groups and social and economical inequalities, especially in Ecuador, where she's originally from. This is still wrapped in plastic because when you buy books in Mexico, this is how they come. This is Seven Empty Houses by Samantha Schweblin. This is Argentinian fiction. In Spanish it's called Siete Casas Vacías. I don't know much about this, but I tried to buy as many of the books I've just heard about, especially if they've been translated, because I don't want to miss out. Then we have the Valancourt Book of World Horror Stories, Volume 1 and 2. So short horror fiction in translation from around the world, and the breadth of these is really wide, literally from every single continent. We have like amazing representation, so very cool indeed. I should also say that all of these are my own read books, because my read books I keep them somewhere else, and I like to think of my bookshelves as a place of potential. So yeah, that's just an extra disclaimer. We then have 3 Mariana Enriquez collections. The Argentinian Queen of Horror, and I have very shamefully never read any of them. I'm sure all of you understand. We have Things We Lost in the Fire. Also, I thought it would be fun to show you the covers that we get in Mexico. Dangers of Smoking in Bed. And I might get the title of this one wrong. A sunny place for shady people, something like that. I actually love this cover so much. I actually loved remembering that I have this. This is Biogenesis by Tatsuaki Ishikuro, more translated Japanese fiction, and this is sci-fi horror. I'm pretty sure the themes in this one are around scientific research, but I am not super sure. But I bought it because I found it very intriguing, and I am still intrigued by it. We Are Wolves, edited by Gemma Amor. This is a werewolf-themed anthology. It's actually edited by Gemma Amor, Laurel Hightower, and Cynthia Pelayo. And it has stories from a lot of authors I've enjoyed reading from before, such as Hailey Piper, V. Castro, and Jessica Guest. So I'm pretty sure this is good. Thomas Ligotti's Songs of a Dead Dreamer and a Grim Scribe. I've heard fantastic things about this. I've heard that is very weird, existentialist, brutal, I think somewhat cosmic horror. I've read some Ligotti before, but I don't think it was his best work, and I've been told that this is. So I got a Penguin Classics edition because, you know, I love this. So now I want to read all these books. This is making me really excited, actually. Then I have Unthinkable and Unspeakable, 2 queer gothic horror anthologies by Hunt Publishing, an independent Scottish publisher that I love, both edited by Celine Fron. The Diving Pool by Yoko Ogawa. These are meant to be creepy and disturbing, I think very much in the vein of Japanese horror fiction. This is a weird book I found in a second-hand bookshop in London. The Impaled and Other Head Trips by Gary Fry, with an introduction by Ramsey Campbell, and actually it's signed by both of them. It has great blurbs. I don't know anything about this author, but I love when you just find something in a bookshop that calls your name and you have no idea what it is, but it whispers in your ear that you should buy it. So that's what I did. This is another second-hand bookshop find. Year's Best Hardcore Horror Volume 1, edited by Randy Chandler and Cheryl Mullinax. Never heard about them before. This is from 2016, so quite old, but I do recognize some names in the lineup. Jeff Strand, Adam Caesar, and Christopher Triana. So we will see. I have avoided reading these because of course they are very gory and violent, and I'm not often in the mood for that. Loteria by Cynthia Pelayo. The concept for this is based on a Mexican board game called Loteria, and it has these cards with different symbols, and I think each of the stories is inspired by one of these symbols, so that's really cool. And I think the stories are in the style of a fairy tale, but Latin American, so there's no reason I shouldn't love this. Cruel Works of Nature by Gemma Amor. I also had the ebook for these. I think I've read maybe 2 stories, but of course I wanted this hardback edition because it's illustrated by Gemma herself. And the inside's also illustrated, so I definitely wanted this. And I really enjoyed Gemma Amor's short fiction. The Best Horror of the Year, Volume 13. You know the deal with this. Another Samantha Schweblin. I might also get this title wrong. Birds in the Mouth? Birds in Your Mouth? Something along those lines. I think this is a little bit sci-fi as well, but I'm not sure. This one, I'm not sure has a translation to English as I have here. This is called Pétalos by Mexican author Guadalupe Nettel, but she has had stories translated and put into a different collection. I just don't know if the whole collection has been translated into the same collection, if you know what I mean. She is super famous, so I really want to read this and see if it lives up to the hype, and then if it does, I'll obviously let you know. We're about halfway through, so not doing too bad. Spirit Seasons, edited by Alex Davies. This was a special edition book made for this year's UK Ghost Story Festival. I went there, so that's where I got this, and it has short stories by all of the panelists, so that's cool. Edgar Allan Poe, The Fall of the House of Usher, and Other Writings. No explanation needed for this. I think I've read most of the stories in this book at some point in my life, but this is an author I definitely go back to time and time again. So I think this is a bookshelf staple. Heather Parry, This Is My Body, Given for You. Scottish horror author, her body horror collection. That's all I have to say. This is Ronald Malfi's Ghost Written. This is actually 4 novellas, not short stories, but I thought since it's a collection, it makes sense to put it here. Never read Ronald Malfi before, so I'm not sure what to expect. Angela Carter's The Bloody Chamber. I've read a couple of these, but not cover to cover. Very interesting and very cool writing style I have found, where it doesn't really feel like you're reading, like Angela Carter's just injecting images into your brain. Really weird experience. I want to read more because I don't know if maybe that day there was something weird in my brain, but very interesting experience. Apple and Knife by Intan Paramadita. Indonesian horror, and I'm pretty sure some people don't even classify this as horror because if I understand correctly, this is more about the human horrors rather than supernatural ones. We're gonna go into a bit of a vintage section. The second Mayflower book of Black Magic Stories, edited by Michael Parry. This is from 1974, occult horror themed anthology. Clive Barker's Books of Blood 2, 4, and 6. I've been on the hunt for the rest of these, but I don't find the editions that I like, so I'll just keep searching. I've read a couple of stories here and there, but again, none of these cover to cover. The Pan Book of Horror Stories, edited by Herbert Van Thal. This was a really long-running series. This first one was originally published in 1959, and I think the series ran until the late 80s. These books are so old, I find that the stories tend to be very hit or miss, but this tab here is one of my favorite short stories ever. This is Contents of the Dead Man's Pocket by Jack Finney. Jack Finney as in the person who wrote The Invasion of the Body Snatchers. And I wouldn't even classify that story as horror. It's more like general fiction, but it is so tense and so gripping. I was literally sweating as I read, so if you can ever find it, I highly recommend that. I've also spent ages looking for an edition I like of this first Pan book, but I think because it's the first one, it's kind of popular, so it's kind of rare. So I had to get this other edition that I don't like as much. I'll show you some of the original ones so you know what I'm talking about. These are the second and the third pan horror books. So as you can see, they're like smaller, more like mass market paperback size. The artwork's always really creepy as well, really cool. I only have the second and third because I promised myself, or I made a deal with myself, that I could only buy the next one once I read the second one. So for every one I read, I can buy the next, if you know what I mean. So again, this is motivating me to read these. I just need more time to read. I feel like looking at my own collection is making me really excited about the books I already have, which is good. On a very similar vein, the first and second Fontana book of Great Ghost Stories. So Fontana tried to do, or they did do something similar to Pan, where they put like serialized collections. And I think there are Fontana horror stories, but also there's like a sub-series which is specifically ghost stories, which is the ones I have here. Have not read any of them though, that's why I haven't gotten the third one. Back to modern day. Things have gotten worse since we last spoke. And The Trees Grew Because I Bled There, both by Eric LaRocca. Both I have not read. I've just seen that Eric LaRocca can get quite intense and bleak, and I haven't been in the mood for that, but let me know if actually not that bad, and then I can give it a go. I'm gonna break my rule just to show you this Mexican book that has no translation, but this was a staple during my childhood. This is Socorro by Elsa Bornemann, and this is a horror collection for children that I bought and I had when I was a kid. It's from, the stories are old, they're from 1988, but this book came out in the year 2000, so I was about 11. Steintingler's new horror short stories by R.L. Stine. This is also for children. I think this one's signed. I actually haven't spoken about Goosebumps much in my channel, and I would want to more because I don't think you understand the love I had, and in some ways still do, for R.L. Stine. Like literally, he changed my life. I will support everything he does and I will read his new stories. But I also have Tales to Give You Goosebumps by R.L. Stine, special edition number 1. I think he put maybe 3 or 4 of these Tales to Give You Goosebumps, where it's like Goosebumps but in short form. This is from 1994. Of course I've read it, but I read it when I was a kid, so that's why for now it's in my unread pile. Another Thomas Ligotti, but this is Teatro Grotesco. Don't know what the difference is with the other one. I think it's just more short fiction, but I think I'm gonna read the other one first because that's the one that's like most famous for being his best. Growing Things and Other Stories by Paul Tremblay. I've actually only read Paul Tremblay's horror fiction, and I know that's crazy. I feel like I've only heard bad things about this book, but the stories I have read I actually really enjoyed, so I don't know. I do have weird taste, so. Experiments, a dark biotech anthology. There is literally no way I won't love this because before I did science for a job, science was my main passion alongside horror. So obviously I think I'm gonna love this, and there's a story by David Sodergren, so I'm keen to read that. Tales for Twilight. Oh, I love these metallicized cover. This is 200 years of Scottish ghost stories, so I love a classic ghost story, and I think having Scottish ones will make it particularly appealing to me. I think this year I'll be spending Christmas in Scotland, and I haven't done that for years and years, so oh my god, I think these would be just so perfect for that. 12 Months of Horror. I got this one in last year's Chimera Speculative Fiction Writing Festival. A short story for every month of the year. So I wonder if it would be fun for me to read that next year, starting in January. Might do that. Another random secondhand find. My Goat Ate Its Own Legs by Alex Barrett, and I remember it got my attention because it has like a bite in the lower corner. It says, "This is not a collection of short stories, but it is. These are tales, darkly surreal, dangerously funny tales." Perhaps a gimmick, but it got me. Ray Russell, Haunted Castles, The Complete Gothic Stories. I haven't read Ray Russell before, but from what I've seen people talk about online, I think it's an author I'm really going to enjoy. Hence why I got my beloved Penguin Classic. Reality and Other Stories by John Lancaster. These are short stories about uncanny technologies and the absurd horrors of modern life. This is another one that I didn't remember I had, and it looks really cool. Spindles, Stories from the Science of Sleep. Again, I think another sci-fi horror kind of thing. To be completely honest, this might be more sci-fi than horror, but I feel like anything having to do with sleep has like so much potential to be horrifying, even if it wasn't intended as horror. And what's really cool about this is that each of the authors got paired with a sleep scientist to create the story together. So, oh my god, sounds so good! Why don't I read my books? Terror in the Trench, aquatic horror short stories. Dark Stars, New Tales of Darkest Horror. I think I also got this in an Abominable. And there's pretty big names in this one. Gemma Files, Alma Katsu, John Langan, Josh Malerman, Rams Campbell, Stephen Graham Jones, Caroline Kepnes. But I feel like often when there's no theme to the anthology, I just feel less inclined to pick it up for some reason. I feel like it's just stories. I don't know. There's no hook. Give me a hook. Oh, this is another book that's very special to me. This is Gotted, Beautiful Horror Stories. So this book I started reading, I think in 2017, when I was going through a bit of like an identity crisis. And I think this reminded me about how horror is such a big part of my life and who I am. And consuming horror media, things, books, movies, etc. really makes me feel like myself. And I think it just brought me back to horror in a time of my life where I was like a bit unsure and I actually hadn't been very involved with horror in a while. So then what happened is I started my YouTube channel and I met so many people, so many creators, so many subscribers and viewers, and it was amazing. And then I had to take a break, and I didn't know if it was going to be a prolonged break or just like, you know, move on from YouTube. And my friend Lauren from Happy Haunts Library sent me these, and with a little note that was like, oh, you're missed, something like that. And it just made me feel like I do belong in the horror booktube community, even if I have to take breaks, because I do have to take breaks from these every so often, but I do love doing it. And I don't know, now I'm getting like really emotional, but I felt like it's okay, you can take a break and then I can always come back like I'm doing now. So yeah, very, very special book. Short stories by Latin American women, The Magic and the Real. I didn't know if I should include this because it's not technically horror, but I feel like Latin American fiction is always messed up. For some reason, yeah, it tends to be intense and messed up, and because this is also magical realism, I feel like having that speculative element there are often like ghosts or visions or weird things that happen. So I thought in some way it fit the criteria. And finally, another little vintage gem. I think this is from 1979. This is 65 Great Tales of the Supernatural. I like this because it includes stories that went on to become very famous. It literally has authors like Edgar Allan Poe, Robert Louis Stevenson, H.P. Lovecraft, Washington Irving, Daphne du Maurier, Charles Dickens, Algernon Blackwood, all the big names. Arthur Conan Doyle, but most of them are like unknown stories from unknown authors, at least to me. And some of them are like really good. They're kind of like that old, understated kind of horror story, but sometimes I enjoy reading those. So that is it. I've come back because I forgot I have a couple more things to show you. The first one is a book that I just got in the post. It's another vintage horror short story collection, but this one is more recent. I think it's from the early 90s and it's also YA. It is Point Horror's 13 Tales of Horror, and it includes stories by legends like Christopher Pike, R.L. Stine, and Diane Hope. These are like cheesy YA thrillery stories. I don't know how they will translate to the short story format. And then by my bed I keep all of these short story collections which are in progress. So it's things that I am reading, at least I have started and I've read at least a couple of stories from. So I will show them to you, except this one, because this actually belongs to my British Library of the Weird collection, which I will not be including this time around because it would just be too much. This is The Breaking Point by Daphne du Maurier. These are not necessarily horror stories, but they are kind of like suspenseful and often involve some element of crime. The classic horror stories of H.P. Lovecraft, these are very, very hit or miss for me. Some of them I really hate, some of them I really love, and some of them I've yet to read, hence why this is still in progress. Dark Water by Koji Suzuki, Japanese horror fiction. These are short stories around the theme of water, and there's also like a little wraparound story around them, if I remember correctly. I quite enjoying this. This is a collection of Mexican horror short stories. I'm absolutely in love with the cover of this one. I'll give you a little close-up. I've only read the first two, but I'm pretty sure these are all older stories. It's not modern authors. The Penguin Book of Ghost Stories, pretty self-explanatory. I love this book. This is Haunted Voices, an anthology of gothic storytelling from Scotland. These are stories that have been passed on through generations through oral tradition. So it blurs a little bit the line between fiction and non-fiction, and I usually pair these with the audiobook because they are narrated by Scottish people and it just sounds amazing. Scary stories to tell in the dark. I enjoy reading these around Halloween, so I read some last year and will be reading some more of these this year. And yeah, as you know, the illustrations in these are infamous. And finally, The Lottery and Other Stories by Shirley Jackson. I bought this specifically because I wanted to read The Lottery, but I will be reading the rest at some point. That was my collection of horror short story collections and anthologies. Let me know which ones were your favorites, if you had any, or you know, as usual, just leave me any recommendations, questions, comments. I just love to read what you have to say, and I'll see you on my next video with the next category, which I think will be spooky nonfiction. Okay, bye!